Welcome back to Sika Psychology. This week we're talking about resilience. Resilience is definitely one of the kind of most poorly defined or most mixed up topics within psychology. I think definitely within sports psychology. A lot of people, a lot of fans of sport will take resilience to be a very, very different thing from what it actually is, right? So people will tend to associate resilience with like the player who'll play on with a broken arm or the person who'll run in front of a train, like to show how tough they are. People think resilience is all about kind of strength and toughness. Like resilience is about adaptation or your ability to adapt positively to negative stimulus. So this is where I think a lot of the mix-ups happen, that you'll see something like a field sport athlete continuing to play on after they're injured, and due to that playing on or due to that coming back from an injury too early, they might shorten their career. They might force themselves to be out for longer with the subsequent injury. And people will always talk about like, oh, it shows such great resilience. In fact, that's not really what resilience is. When you look at resilience as a whole, and when the study kind of started and when we draw most of our kind of information from, it goes back to the early 1970s and most of the papers that happened around then. So Dean in 1973 started looking into children who came from troubled households, and they'd basically be showing a difficult childhood as an adverse stimulus. They'd then look at how that child turned out in life, so if they were able to become productive members of society, and then they would make an assessment on how resilient that person was from how positively they were able to adapt from a negative stimulus. A study in 1974, so very soon after the Dean study, was done by Garmese. And Garmese looked at children of parents who were schizophrenic. So basically, children from households who would have had incredible amounts of stress continuously over the course of their entire childhood. They studied the same study design. So they looked at these kids, they looked at them as adults then, and saw like how well they were doing, if they were in employment, if they had any previous convictions, and they'd basically look for resilience within these groups. The interesting thing here is that obviously there was divergent groups. So some people didn't do well. Some people weren't able to get through that adverse stimulus as a young kid. And then certain groups were able to thrive. Certain people became industry leaders. They were becoming, like the example they gave were like soldiers, teachers, people in the public service in Germany. There are a lot of studies like this, right? Werner did a lot of work in it. Berman did a lot of work in it. French did a lot of work in it. There's a huge amount of big names in the sphere of psychology that looked at resilience and that looked at kind of defining resilience. So it's interesting that there was so much work done to define resilience as a topic, yet it is one of these kind of really, really misunderstood areas, especially when we get that transferring over from psychology into sports psychology and sports groups. So what's important for resilience, right? There seems to be three different concepts going on here. The first of these is that you have adaptability. So you're able to adapt to a stimulus and alter, be that psychology or physiology. The second thing then is dynamic application. So your ability to apply things in separate situations continuously. The last thing then is something like homeostatic priority. So homeostatic priority, a lot of you who would have studied biology would know homeostasis. So homeostasis is the physiological set of circumstances where our heart rate is normal at rest, our blood pressure is normal, all of these things are at homeostasis, our core body temperature is the same. So homeostatic priority then is that a person who's resilient is always looking to adapt and change to a stimulus to bring themselves back to homeostasis. So it's staying within a certain kind of content realm is shown to be very, very important for someone who's resilient. Moving on then, looking at resilience as like a trait or being state resilient. So I've talked about state and trait, like the difference between state and trait before. Trait is something you will be born with. State is like a mood or a set of psychological circumstances that are going to change due to the situation, due to the time of the week, whatever it is. So people often think that someone who is resilient as a trait. So it's like one of their character traits. If they're resilient, they're going to be resilient in all aspects of life. A good paper by Fletcher and Sarkar in 2012 showed that resilience really isn't a trait. It's much, much more of a state thing. The classic example here of like an athlete who's a good athlete in school but can't sit in their chair long enough to sit through a whole maths class. That athlete is able to put in loads of hard work on the field or loads of hard work in training or in the gym, yet they can't put in the hard work when it comes to study and be resilient when people keep giving them more tasks and more tasks. So it's very, very clear from examples like this and from that Fletcher paper that it is much more of a state thing. It's not really a trait thing. Why is resilience so important to us, right? If you're looking to hire someone or you're looking to promote someone, or you're looking for the captain of your team, or you're looking for an extra player to come onto your team, resilience is a hugely important area or aspect of their personality that you'll try and screen for. So companies will screen for resilience. Companies who do aptitude tests in their hiring process are looking for resilience. They're looking for both state and trait resilience, particularly state resilience in the areas of work and in the areas of task management. But resilience then becomes a very valuable topic for us to follow up on. How can I find out if someone's resilient? Can I make somebody more resilient? And how can I find out if they're resilient in one task? Are they going to be resilient across multiple aspects of their life? I spoke about resilience being kind of mixed up and poorly defined a lot, or people will mistake grit for resilience or resilience for grit. So what I'm going to read out now is 6 different papers looking at the definition of resilience between 2000 and 2018, and you'll kind of see the commonalities between these definitions. You'll see the points that are important in each of the definitions, but you'll also see the kind of broad spectrum that resilience research covers. So Luther and Cicchetti talk about resilience being positive adaptation despite the presence of risk or adversity. Unger, in 2008, defines resilience as, in the context of exposure to significant adversity, whether psychological, environmental, or both, resilience is both the capacity of individuals to navigate their way to health-sustaining resources, including opportunities to experience feelings of well-being, and a condition of the individual family, community, and culture to provide these health resources and experiences in culturally meaningful ways. Galli and Vili in 2008 as well describe resilience as favourable responses of athletes or teams to incidents such as catastrophic injuries, prolonged slumps, or the dreaded occurrence of choking. Fletcher and Sarkar, that paper I mentioned earlier from 2012, talks about resilience being the role of mental processes and behaviour in promoting personal assets and protecting an individual from the potential negative effects of the stressors. In 2017, Brian, O'Shea and McIntyre defined resilience as a dynamic process encompassing the capacity to maintain regular functioning through diverse challenges or to rebound through the use of facilitative resources. And then the last one, Stainton et al., 2018, resilience should be treated as a multimodal and dynamic process. So there's a few things that are popping up here, right? Resilience is a process. Resilience tends to be a process in response to a stressor or a stimulus. Resilience should always be a positive response. So it's never using something like a maladaptive coping strategy. And that resilience occurs across a number of aspects here. So they're talking about family life. They're talking about sport, high performance sport. They're talking about someone's individual personality or individual risk. So it's clear from this, right, that resilience is a broad topic. It covers a huge range of things, all the way from how resilient somebody will be in a developmental process, how resilient somebody might be in a sporting context, how resilient somebody might be in the workplace, or how resilient somebody might be in terms of emotional resilience. One of the issues that comes along with all of these different kind of definitions, all of the misnomers between the definitions, is the fact that there isn't one standout definition. There's not one by which all others are judged. And it's almost like an arms race for who's going to define resilience again, who's going to do a better job of refining the definition or refining the defining. But maybe you need to just have a standalone, something that would include like a contextual caveat, possibly something that's like a state-like resilience and a trait-like resilience. And I think that would be very, very positive in terms of like moving forward for resilience and just generally for psychological studies. The last point on resilience then is that resilience can be cultivated. You can take somebody who might have very low levels of resilience and increase their levels of resilience across a broad scope or a broad range. You can also take that person who might have a very high level of resilience in one area, and you can bring that to other areas of their life, basically. What it looks like, the future of resilience studies and kind of double-blind placebo studies and papers, all of them are pushing towards intervention-based. So usually in the areas of positive psychology, usually in the areas of like a very, very rigorous intervention style study. And they're going to be showing more and more that resilience is something we're going to be able to alter, we're going to be able to manipulate, cultivate, grow, and make people who are more resilient, make athletes who are more resilient, and overall just allow people to deal with stress and deal with poor situations much better. So thanks very much for watching. Tune back in next week for another Sika Psychology. Please leave a comment below and like the video. Thank you.